Well, I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer of Diageo, Paul Walsh, along with Joergen Ole Haslestad. He's the CEO of Yara, a global firm specializing in agricultural products. Thank you so much to you both for joining us. Paul, I want to start off with you because we've talked a lot about, growth and about the fact that we think growth is back, but in very different, strengths depending on which market you focus on. Do you have any concerns that we're talking about a growth which is still very, very fragile?
I think we are still in the early stages of a global recovery. I think there is no question that versus this time a year ago, I think everyone is feeling better. However, the reality is that the world we operate in is very uneven. There are certain markets that are giving us very exciting growth. Latin America, Asia, Africa. There are others, particularly Europe, where growth is elusive. And I think that's going to stay that way for quite some time.
Joergen, do you have a similar assessment of the world economy?
Absolutely. We see in certain areas, Africa in particular, where we are very active, is having a high growth. But in general, it will take some while to get up to the normal level again.
And inflation in terms of food prices and the raw materials that you use, that's going up?
That's going up, yeah.
And you're concerned that it will go up even higher?
We need to find a balance, one in particular related to food. There was over too many years too little money spent into agriculture and making agriculture more productive. And this is something which needs to change, and we are balancing on a sharp edge.
Paul, how much is that a concern to you? I mean, you have to buy commodities.
Yeah, we do buy quite a lot of agricultural inputs. I think we have to look at inflation at two levels. First of all, there is global inflation and the impact it will have on our business. At present, I see that as very manageable. However, in certain markets, you are seeing food inflation that is leading to civil unrest that I think we should be concerned about, because that will serve to stifle growth. But that shouldn't confuse overall global inflation, which I think is broadly in control.
And we were just speaking actually to the World Bank president saying we have to manage this food inflation as best we can, but also a lot of the problems are within these countries. Do you feel affected in Northern Africa by this phenomenon?
Yes, we do. But I think that it is something which one need to control very carefully. And it is controllable, but one has to be aware of it and pay attention to it.
Paul, talk to me about your strategy to actually gain full benefits from this growth in the emerging markets for Diageo.
Basically, our strategy is twofold. Very much focusing on the growing markets, which are far more than just the BRICS that we used to talk about a few years ago. You've now got Colombia, Indonesia, Vietnam. Our strategy is basically twofold. We will acquire smallish businesses because that's all that's there to acquire.
Now that's interesting. Local names because people recognize it and that's what they ask for at the bar?
Yeah, because you have in these markets a massive emerging middle class, whereby imported spirits such as Johnny Walker may be still out of their reach. But to premiumise the local offerings is what we do, and we think that will be a very lucrative market. And that's why earlier this week we announced the acquisition in Vietnam of a 23% stake in the Hanoi Liquor Company. So we will be acquiring, but equally we will also be developing our global brands in those markets on the back of the distribution systems that we've acquired.
Is there a concern that actually a lot of these markets are growing very fast, but they're fueled by cheap money, and therefore we're going to see asset bubbles, and therefore companies that go into these markets need to be a little bit more careful than previously thought?
I think you certainly have to price in the risk capital cost. However, at the end of the day, it's very hard for a company like ours to influence that. So our strategy is just to be very broad-based. We operate in 180 countries around the world. So if you have a bubble, if you have a problem in one particular market, usually you can offset it elsewhere.
Joergen, I'm always very intrigued in actually finding out if CEOs come here just to understand where the world economy is going or actually to sign deals. Are you here for business?
I am. My particular task this year is then to report on what we promised to achieve last year. That's the Southern Growth Corridor in Tanzania, where we have been working with President Kikwete, where he really took on this as his activity and engagement. And we are presenting, he is presenting this afternoon the blueprint of the Southern Growth Corridor in Tanzania, which is why I'm here, to push that to be part of a team which has been driving this for the last year.
Paul, are you here to sign?
I'm not signing anything. I'm here to listen, to learn, certainly meet with our leading global customers and suppliers. But it's very helpful to talk with other CEOs and business leaders to kind of corroborate your own thinking.
To understand where the world economy is heading. Paul Walsh, Joergen Ole Haslestad, thank you so much for joining us.